Did drones spread bird flu in Indiana? Earlier this week, the Indiana House's Committee on Courts and Criminal Code heard testimony about mysterious drones operating in northeastern Indiana in early 2025. Witnesses say that the drones appeared, then days later, the bird flu arrived. Witnesses spoke at a hearing on House Bill 1064, which seeks to create criminal and civil penalties for the repeated operation of unmanned aerial vehicles over private property without permission. During the hearing, Representative Kendall Culp described why he authored the bill, a correlation between the appearance of unknown drones and subsequent outbreaks of the bird flu.
What prompted this is there were Indiana poultry farmers in the northeast part of the state that noticed drones, didn't know whose they were, operating on their property without permission, and 2 to 3 days later they broke with bird flu. Were those connected? They don't know, but they do know that those drones were there without permission. One even was seen inside the barn, under the roof, flying above the bird. So obviously that's a concern.
Several witnesses gave testimony, but the most disturbing was the statement from cattle producer Lenny Mullenkamp, who lives in Jay County. It's a long statement, so I'll try to just play the most relevant parts. His complete statement is on the Indiana General Assembly's website as part of the recording of the January 21st committee hearing.
In mid-January, we had a lot of odd things happen that it was odd. My wife saw a drone outside our facility over our operation. There's usually a white light and a blinking red light that just stays put. And so there were a few of those things that happened, but January 27th was the big night when all of a sudden it seemed like dozens of drones were everywhere. As I said, I have a $2 million bird laying complex just 2 miles to the north of me. I have another 2 million bird poultry complex 2 miles to the south of me. And there were dozens of drones over all of the poultry facilities in the area.
Then he described local law enforcement's reaction.
And the common refrain from the sheriffs of the area was, well, we can't do anything about it, but it's a felony to shoot them down. So if you feel endangered, you can't do anything until it literally sets down on your ground, on your property. And so it was disheartening, but that's what everyone was seeing. And we didn't know what was going on. It was odd because they were still using navigational beacons, trying to be within the law, but they were in places where you would think, what's the interest in a livestock facility, a cattle barn or a beef barn or a poultry facility?
Soon after, a neighboring poultry operation had to cull 2 million birds.
My one neighbor had their barn break on February 9th, shortly after these drones were there. And they ended up having to kill 2 million birds and euthanize them, and it becomes a major devastating economic, environmental, everything kind of occurrence. So it's an inconvenient coincidence that wherever their drones were, that's where we were also seeing bird flu happen.
Next, he describes hearing a rumor about something even more disturbing that happened on an Amish farmstead, and he tracked it down to its source.
But ultimately, I found Joni Graber near Amishville, Indiana, in northern Adams County, and he was in his barn early in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, he and his 2 daughters. The daughters were picking up eggs because it's the ducks lay eggs there, and the children will pick them up as chores in the morning. And he said he had seen the night before, on March 2nd, he saw a drone parked over the woods to the north of the property, but didn't think a whole lot about it, other than that was odd. But then the morning of March 3rd, that drone came along and sprayed into the open curtain all the way along the side of the barn. That's big news. And his daughter was on that side. His daughter Emma, 9 years old, was on that side along that curtain picking up eggs. And Emma got sick, so Emma had respiratory problems for a week, Joni said. And my big question is, well, was a sheriff's report filed? This is big news if there's active nefarious actors spraying something on your barn and you can't do anything about it. That's the refrain from the sheriff's office. So no sheriff's report was ever conducted. It was another drone sighting, that was dismissed as these mysterious drones. But these are spraying drones. Now it's a different deal. So I talked to other ones who, in the same area in Amishville, it's a lot of duck barns there. Enos Jurod, Jake Graber, and what brought it up was they had a funeral on February 26th of a prominent member of the Amish community there. And that morning the talk of the funeral was, the smell of chemical in the air was so pervasive that a lot of these barns had been sprayed.
The substance wasn't tested, but the bird flu arrived 3 days later, and at that time, the facility was tested.
Did they ever test the chemicals to find out what it was?
No, in fact, the sheriff never did arrive there. Bird flu did break on that barn 3 days later, which is the common incubation period. And so the question is, I didn't even know if there is such a thing as bird flu inoculum, where you could actually control it and spray it and disperse it. I don't know if that's a case or not, but the facility did test positive for bird flu.
He then discusses some suspicions and notes that State Representative Matt Lehman also talked to the Amish.
And without saying any names, do you have an idea who's doing it?
No, I took Representative Matt Lehman, to see these same people. Maybe he's here.
He was over here a second ago.
Matt had some suspicions. It seemed very suspicious that because at the same time there was a lot of things going on in the federal government as far as the indemnity. If you got sprayed with, if you came down with bird flu, they would compensate you for your losses. And what was happening at the time, shortly around that time, that indemnity amount that you got paid for a dead bird increased dramatically. And all of a sudden it creates a situation where these birds are worth more dead than alive, kind of thing. So all of a sudden it's something that should have been investigated, in my opinion, of who are the nefarious actors that had motive here, because there's a lot of financial motive on the table all over the place here.
He describes the typical drones used in agriculture, and then he describes the mystery drones. He says that his brother estimated that one was the size of a car.
What does the spraying drones look like compared to like a normal drone?
So normal drones, typically, like we use them in agriculture all the time for spraying our crops. I have someone who comes and sprays my crops with a drone, and they're typically about 4 foot by 4 foot size with 4 propellers on them, and they have a 10-gallon, roughly 5 to 10-gallon tank on them. So you can see that it's a tank there that then disperses it, and it's really, it covers more than 4 feet because of the wafting of the drone spray. It will cover like 30 feet, so it covers and goes down and back. So these drones, so we're used to seeing those kind of drones. The kind of drones that we were seeing on January 27, 28, one flew right over my brother's barnyard, and he was estimating it was maybe 100 feet above the ground, and he said it was the size of a car. And my other brother saw one that, as it went through the sky, all of a sudden a flame comes out the back and it takes off. And it moves a lot faster, and then the flame ends, and then it's back to being a red blinking light. And so it seems like this is military. This is something that government has to be involved with. Well, that's fine, that something's important enough for them to be working on that. But all of a sudden it opened the door to other nefarious actors that wanted to do bad things. And I think that's what we were seeing. So this other drone, I don't know how big it was, the one that sprayed the duck barn where the kids were picking up. If it was large size or small size, he did not say. That was on March 3rd, I know.
If you remember, some witnesses said that the mystery drones in New Jersey were the size of a car. This hearing also had testimony from the Indiana Farm Bureau's Ryan Hoff and Jay County Farm Bureau President Barry Miller. They both described widespread drone sightings at that time. Miller said that the FBI opened an investigation and that the FAA and Homeland Security were contacted, all without any results.
We started having issues, drones showing up back in January of 2025. Had a large number of them through January through March. We contacted the FBI. They came out and investigated. We talked to the FAA. And we talked to Homeland Security. And we've got no information from any of them. These drones that are operating are not your typical Walmart $20 drones. They're of a higher tech. The technology on them is higher on the level of military or commercial, and we're not against drones. As Ryan said, we have friends and neighbors that operate them to spray crops, to observe crops, and that type of thing. One instance, my son, who raises hogs, spotted a drone about 50 feet above his driveway, and he was going to pick his girls up at school. And he went, and this drone followed him for 7 or 8 miles. Now, under FAR 107.31, you have to have visual contact of the drone you're operating. This drone followed him for 7 to 8 miles. When he sped up, it sped up. When he slowed down, it slowed down. And then it finally peeled off. And we had these drones operating around barns, as Ryan said, with no one visually watching these drones. And I really thank Representative Colt for introducing this legislation. There needs to be some kind of controls to prevent drones flying over personal property. And we, like Representative Colt said, many times after these drones appeared at livestock facilities, AI broke out.
It seems unlikely that this bill will move out of committee during this short legislative session. State Representative Matt Pierce explains why it needs significant revisions.
Representative Pierce.
Yeah, just may say real quickly, it's a little bit difficult for me to believe that out of all the criminal law we have, invading someone's space and spraying chemicals is not a number of crimes. And so it's a little bit disconcerting to hear that the law enforcement wasn't very interested in figuring out what was going on there. So I think there's probably some law that could be worked with these explanations you've gotten. But the biggest thing is the bill as it's written now is just very broad, and you've got to figure out how to make it work with the federal laws, because the FAA has an interest in making sure these drones can function, because we have so many parts of commerce now that use drones in their business. And so the feds have said that the states can regulate drones for privacy and some other limited purposes. But if you have a bill that's so broad that essentially is preventing drones from flying over a lot of things to the point where it can't hardly fly at all, because if you have to get everyone's permission to fly over their property, it's like, imagine if airplanes or jets had to get permission from every property owner, you wouldn't be able to have an airline industry. So if you go too broad, I think you're going to end up just getting preempted by the federal government. So the key is to figure out what is the pinpoint thing that you're trying to prevent, and then be very focused in how you address it. And it's kind of hard to do in a short session where we're moving at warp speed here.
What do you think? Have there been unknown drones active near you? Let me know in the comments. This has been commentary from Beyond 465. If you thought that this video was helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. If not, thank you for listening. Bye-bye.